Welcome to the Jiu Jitsu podcast. My name is Stacy. I am a Jiu Jitsu, and this is my podcast. In this episode, I sat down with my friend and training partner, Coach Dave Greene, to discuss nutrition and Jiu Jitsu. We had a really great discussion talking about how complex health is, how different nutrition affects people differently, and how to build consistent habits. However, I do need to disclaim something for legal purposes. This is very important, so please do not skip over this. Dave and I are not medical professionals, nor do we ever claim to be. In fact, we mentioned several times throughout the episode that we are not medical professionals. Also, this podcast episode should not be taken as specific medical advice for anyone. The purpose of this episode is to provide general information about nutrition to help you make informed decisions about your own health and your own body. We also give you resources to turn to if you have specific questions regarding your body and your health. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear because I don't want our message to get misconstrued or misunderstood. Now, with all of that said, please enjoy this informative and fun conversation that I had with Coach Dave Greene. All right, welcome back, everyone. I am sitting here with my friend and training partner, Coach Dave Greene.
Hello. Woo.
Woo!
Yep.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, excited.
Yay, me too. So can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name's Dave Greene. I go by Coach Dave Greene. I am a blue belt at Gracie Barra Downers Grove. I've been training for about just over 2 years, 27. Yeah, May would be my 27th month. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, nice. Now, also, you're here today to talk to us about nutrition and jiu-jitsu, and also, next time, weightlifting / cross-training and jiu-jitsu,
Sure.
which is also... These are specialties of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please introduce to the audience or just say what your particular qualifications are?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I own 2 gyms. My primary gym, my brick and mortar, is a CrossFit gym. It's been in business just shy of 9 years. I've been coaching for 10. I also operate another gym that functions inside a manufacturing company on the west side of Chicago. So that model there is corporate wellness, but a huge percentage of their staff is labor. So it's not like corporate wellness. So I'm a level 3 CrossFit trainer. There's only one more tier. You can be a level 4 CrossFit coach. I have been a precision nutrition certified nutrition coach for 9 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I have a myriad other certifications. Like we use CrossFit as our main modality in my CrossFit gym, but it is not the only theory or philosophy that we adhere to. Like it's kind of the foundation of what we do. But then we branch out into other, I wouldn't call them specialties, but different areas of fitness, wellness. Whether it be like cardio training, marathon training, or Olympic weightlifting or kettlebell movements. And there's other schools that we draw from or certification programs that we just kind of make this mix and blend to deliver the best fitness program we can or wellness program. Because really now it's, people kind of compartmentalize things. They're like, oh, my nutrition's here and my exercise is there and my relationships are here and my work's there or whatever. But the whole thing's like it's an ecosystem. Yeah, which is obvious, I think, but forgotten.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Like you said, it's an that's a really good way to put it. It's an ecosystem. It's like there's so much overlap with everything. And we can talk more about, I guess, the weightlifting, cross-training type of movement thing in our next episode.
Yeah.
But for today, let's kind of talk more about the nutrition aspect. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I was hoping you could dispel some common misconceptions about nutrition in general.
There's a lot to unpack here, right? Because there are so many myths and misconceptions, and there's just so much noise out there. The most common myth is that, like, well, your diet and your nutrition are like these separate things. to be successful, you need to incorporate a plan that is sustainable and you can make a part of your life for the rest of your life. The other thing is that, dieting is hard, or a good nutrition plan is hard, and it really isn't. For most people, some very minor tweaks can make some profound impact on their overall health and fitness, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And I was actually listening to another podcast that I enjoy very much, and they were talking about how they get questions all the time. It's like, well, which exercise should I do? Which vegetables should I eat? Which this or that should I have? And they're just like, the one you're gonna eat.
Right, yeah.
Like the one you're gonna do. Yeah. Like do the thing you're gonna do.
It's gotta be enjoyable, and that's not to say, what we define as enjoyable. That needs to shift a little bit, I think, because we got to look at our goals and our habits, and there's so much to unpack here. There really is. But if we are just eating a bunch of quote-unquote junk food because we enjoy the taste, the adverse effects from a lifetime or many years of doing that, it's going to be unenjoyable, right? There's going to be medical bills and pathologies and illnesses, and loved ones are going to have to take care of you, and there's a kind of cascade of problems that can develop. So, so that temporary enjoyment of whatever is good. And don't get me wrong, the birthday cakes are out, I'm having a slice of cake, or, go out with my wife, I'm going to have a couple drinks, date night or whatever. But I always keep at the forefront of my mind, what is how I feel the next day. And and am I miserable? Am I hungover and recovering? I don't want to ever be in that state again.
Right.
So there's some things like that you have to consider.
Yeah. And for those who want to nitpick what he just said, he's not saying don't eat stuff that tastes good, you guys. I think what you're saying is just don't make that your whole entire diet.
Well, so there's this myth of good foods, bad foods, right? The way I coach, or my approach to coaching, is there's no absolutes, right? So I'm not going to say there's no bad foods, but there are surprisingly few foods that I would say never eat. One example is trans fats. There's synthetic fats. They're made in a lab. They cause a ton of problems inside your body. So that's one thing I was never ever eat trans fats if you can avoid it. And think about we're talking about margarine, synthetic butters, just you should not eat them. But that's about the only one, if you enjoy a glass of wine, have a glass of wine every once in a while, but realize the implications it has, or the ramifications it has on you moving towards your goals, whatever they are. If you want to get stronger, develop lean mass, tone, you want to lose weight, you want to be better on the Jiu Jitsu mats. I want to have a little more endurance, energy,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's an important point to make too, is that and that's something that I've had to learn over many years, that I finally am getting a handle on, is that what feels good right now doesn't always feel good later.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure. Yeah.
So, I think it's interesting that you brought up the point that there's no quote-unquote bad foods, because I think we're served that narrative all the time. And then, we hear women especially, and I really hope your wife hasn't said this stuff. I feel so bad. Go. But we as women have said, we'll make comments about ourselves, or to ourselves, or, around others about oh, I'm on a diet, but I had, a candy bar today. Oh, I cheated. Oh, this or that or whatever. Right. It's oh, I ate so much junk food. I had one donut at work. You can have a donut. You're allowed to eat a donut.
Right, yeah. So what happens with a lot of people is okay, I'm on this diet, or I have this regimen that I'm going through, and then they fall off the rails. They eat that donut, or they're in the office, somebody brings a box of donuts, they're really good. They walk by it 20 times on the way to the bathroom or whatever, and and then their self-control is a lot like currency. This happens to all of us. So it's you walk by 20 times, and that 21st time you're oh, I've been so good all day, I'm gonna eat the donut.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is, you have the donut and you're well, I messed up already, so the rest of the day is just shot.
Yeah.
And so those myths, need to be overtaken. It's having a donut in the grand scheme of thing, if you're relatively, and I hate these words, but good with your diet.
Quote unquote good. You couldn't see him do the little air quotes.
Yeah, air quotes,
when
right.
he said that.
Yeah, it's you just need to understand, I had a donut today, I'm going to get back on track, or, I'm not going to have dessert, at dinner or whatever, so that's, people throw out the entire day because of, one misstep,
Yeah.
And when really overall, it's just like going to Jiu Jitsu, right? Consistency is the key. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but you keep showing up and practicing the habits, the good, I hate these words, but, the habits that are going to move you towards your goals.
Yeah.
Right? And, so consistency is the big thing. I think that's a huge takeaway with this.
Yeah, definitely. And, now, I feel like I haven't made a secret about the fact that I have depression, and I'm finally managing it with medication, which I realize medication is not a tool for everyone, but it has been very effective for me. And I've been able to see kind of like pre-treatment, and now I was stuck in the all or nothing.
Yeah.
I was stuck there so bad.
Yeah.
And I would try, and then like one thing would happen, and then I would just like throw my hands and be like, well, I give up.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to kind of live that way.
Yeah. So
it really is. Now that I'm able to be more consistent, I'm really starting to see kind of the fruits of that labor, obviously because I've been training jiu-jitsu for like 7 years now, so obviously I can see like the jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, like personally with things like nutrition, I'm finally starting to see, like, as long as consistently I'm putting things into my body that make me feel good and that I know are going to help me perform better. And again, like, which vegetables do I eat? The ones that I'm going to eat. Yeah. The ones that I like. For example, I love carrots. I love to eat carrots. I eat them as much as I can. Yeah. But anyway, I'm getting off track. But it's good. Like, and so like now, I'm like, for example, this weekend I'm going to my nephew's birthday party. I'm gonna have some birthday cake and share ice cream with the kids or whatever.
Because you have to celebrate.
Yeah, it's a celebration, and so I'm not gonna feel bad about it.
Yeah, like the Chicago Opens tomorrow. If it was my nephew's birthday tonight, like I may be skipping that piece of cake because I got to make weight tomorrow. But that's like a very, sort of extreme situation.
Yeah.
Like it's very critical. Like
it's a very specific set of circumstances.
But yeah, you got to go out and celebrate. And by the way, I love how candid you are. With your depression. But you have to understand that you're not alone. I've helped thousands of people at this point, and I can't tell you what percentage of them, but it's going to go along with whatever the American demographic, how many people are depressed, anxiety, those things. One of the things that really is fascinating to me with diet, and this is where the whole ecosystem thing comes into play, is that, our gut health affects our mood. And there's a lot of science, there's so much research coming out about this, but I forget but you have serotonin and dopamine, like a huge component of that is manufactured in your stomach. So if your gut health is not optimized, it's going to affect your mood. Now, I'm not going to say like, go off depression medication if you need it because you're working on a better diet, but it's very interesting. Like it's the cause and effect thing. Like, is there depression because of less than ideal gut health? Possibly. It's an interesting thing, and every situation is different, obviously.
That would be something to consult your physician about.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not doctors or licensed medical professionals. But if you have questions about that for yourself, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm a trainer.
I feel
I'm
like
not
I have
a clinician.
to say that.
Yeah. No, but it is. And that's par for the course in my field. People come in with low back injuries, those sorts of things. Like, I can't say I can fix you, but I can say, like, hey, if we start doing some strength training the right way, we can minimize that pain.
Yeah.
And then same thing with the diet stuff. Like, I operate under a registered dietitian. You have to in Illinois if you're getting nutrition coaching.
Definitely.
But it's interesting to note because I think this is where part of the problem comes in with nutrition for most people. It's like what we were taught, right? Like I grew up with the food pyramid.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah, 7 to 11 servings. The base of that pyramid was 7 to 11 servings of carbohydrates.
Yep.
And it turns out that is total bunk science.
Yeah.
And so the noise that we get, women get a lot of it, men get a lot of it too. We all have body image issues that we're going through, no matter how fit we are. It just, if you're at the checkout aisle at the grocery store, that like all the magazines are.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, ladies. Men get this too. Like, I don't want to. Obviously, in my podcast, because I'm a woman and I'm trying to reach other women too, but I'm not trying to leave out the men. Yeah. Because like men get health messaging all the time
Oh, yeah.
too. That's like they're always wanting men to be like cut here and like muscly there and like this and that and the other, and like, and then for women it's the opposite. It's like be smaller, be, you know.
Well, and there's with men, you know, I'm a dude, right? So I get it, but like this whole like dad bod, or like there's this like pride of having this big belly. It's like, well, where the heck did that come from? You know, like. And I know plenty of guys are just like big old gut hanging out. Like this is like the definition of what a man is. It's like I challenge that, you know. And there's you know, maybe it's a few years gone by now where like the dad bod was like the hot thing. Like, you know, ladies wanted dad bod. I'm like, you know, but it's just it's interesting because I think it's a normalization of, I don't want to say infirmity, but like less than ideal health, you know. And with this interesting stats about like doctors only typically study like nutrition for like one semester, right? So they don't, most of them, I got to caveat this, you know, to qualify it, that the vast majority of doctors don't study nutrition. Like they can't put you on a wellness, like a health plan to have you fix the underlying ailment. Like all they really do is, you know, prescribe a procedure or a pill. They can't prescribe exercise. Very few of them actually study, you know, a healthy lifestyle. So it's interesting. Because like the powers that be, you know, the people that fund medical research, you know, big pharma, you know, also are like these corporate conglomerates that also have, they're like the food scientists. So like, so they're on one side of it, they're creating foods in labs that make us sick, and on the other side of it, they're selling the cures. It's this huge, you know, money making machine, and it's, you know, in my opinion, it needs to be fixed. It's disgusting because it's caused a lot of health concerns. The trends in this country are quite alarming. You know, the amount of people that are obese, morbidly obese, you know, and the underlying health conditions that come from that. It's like, that's why I started my gym, is I needed to fight that, combat that, and help educate people.
Yeah. Although I will kind of add a little bit to that, and say I don't think that the BMI is helpful or accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you take BMI as a measurement of health, it will tell you that I am obese.
I'm morbidly obese on a BMI chart.
On the BMI. Yeah. But it's like if you saw me walking on the street, you may not necessarily think that way. So just as a... Here on Jiu Jitsu's podcast, we don't believe in the BMI.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and I heard somewhere, I never fact checked this, but I have no reason to doubt it. The BMI was actually invented in like the 1820s, and it hasn't really been in
you know, I've heard something like that too. And like, but just like you, I also haven't fact checked that. Yeah. So. But
I use it all the time because I don't like BMI as a metric. You know.
Yeah.
When people come into the gym, like we will do a body scan where we here's your percent body fat and those sorts of things, and we're not like saying, you know, you should be at a certain body fat percentage. You know, we put targets out there, but it's more about like, how do you feel? Like, are you performing the way you want? You know, if you're doing your jiu-jitsu, you know, whatever, training, sparring, like, do you have the energy levels you need to compete at the level you want?
Exactly.
You know, so it's a very kind of subjective, you know, metrics that we use. And we'll say, okay, like, you know, like if I were to get like super lean and shredded, I would be at like 7%, 8% body fat, you know, but like the diet I would need to maintain and all that, like it would be very difficult. So it's like this balance of like, okay, can you maintain this? How do you feel? Do you have the energy levels you want? So it's not like men or women. It's like we don't try to peg them into these things. But there's a lot of subjective stuff, and we also look at like blood panels too, like what's your lipid panel like?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Know, those sorts
I mean,
of things.
I appreciate that you said that because what I've heard you saying just now is that you ask the people for how are you feeling? Do you have energy? Do you have stamina? Can you perform how you want to? And if not, then let's go ahead and work on getting you there. What I haven't heard you say is, what size are you? How much do you weigh? All that kind of stuff, because that doesn't matter.
Well,
that doesn't matter. Like,
it
it's
only
not
matters if it
necessarily
matters,
a measurement of health.
Yeah.
Like, you can't necessarily like look at somebody. And here's the thing too, is like, you can't look at a person and know necessarily whether, like, how healthy they are.
Yeah, we use those type of goals though. Like if a lady comes in, just as an example, she's like, I want to fit into this dress size. It's like, okay, we'll use that as a marker for you because that's your goal.
Yeah.
You know, or a dude, it's like, I want to fit in these jeans, or like, oh, I want to put that 2-piece on. You know, like so we use those type of goals. But if I were to, somebody comes in and says, I want to lose 20 pounds. That's great. What do you do when you lose 20 pounds? Do you quit? Right? And this is my problem with diets, right? Like people like the definition of diet for most people, it's finite. It's got a beginning and an end. So like, okay, I'm on this diet for 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is. I lost my 20 pounds. Okay, great. Now what? Like, so one of my big goals with my clients is like, they have these short-term goals frequently. I can help almost anybody lose 20 pounds in 2-3 months.
Yeah.
If they show up and do the things I'm telling them to do. But then what happens after that? I'm trying to create this lifelong roadmap. I want them to get on a sustainable plan that they can use for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my overarching goal, regardless of who I'm sitting in front of.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think in terms of nutrition, I think that is the way to go. Like you have to be able to, and that's another thing with the diets too. And I've heard this all over the place. I've tried diets before. Yeah. It never works because it's not sustainable. Yeah. Like I can do it for like maybe a month or two. Yeah. Trying to do it every day for like a month or two, and then by like week 7 or 8, the whole thing just collapses in on itself.
Yo-yoing. Yeah. And then you get depressed or upset with your results because you're like, oh, I lost 10 pounds and I gained 10 pounds or whatever.
Well, I mean, my depression's different because there's no reason behind it. I just, the medicine helps me, but and
people
speaking
get
of
frustrated. They feel like failures.
It's so frustrating. It does. Because it just exacerbates the problem. Yeah. And having that on top of it too. But anyway, not to make this about a depression episode, but like you said, this like me being candid about this stuff is like I got tired of feeling like I was struggling inside my own head and I had nobody to turn to. Yeah. So I was like, well, if nobody else is going to talk about it, I guess I'll start.
Yeah. Well, I'm here for it. Like, I'm on a mission to help as many people as I possibly can. That's like, and that's what I do. My gym is CrossFit Spiro. It means hope. Like I'm trying to, Spiro means hope. It's Latin. I'm trying to deliver hope for people. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Like, I've helped 400-pound dudes lose 150, 200 pounds. I have Ironman athletes in my gym, and I'm helping them tweak their performance. So, like, I don't know if they'll ever podium at an Ironman, but at least they're, they're improving their times, and and so it's, anyway, all across the spectrum.
Yeah. And I think you talking about the athletes you work with, this is a perfect segue into my next question, which is, how is nutrition different, or is it different for athletes versus non-athletes?
I would say yes, absolutely. And we can categorize it as athlete or not athlete, or, competitor, jiu-jitsu, real play, competitive player, or, hobbyist.
Yeah.
Everybody starts with kind of the emotional and the habit and the addiction side of food, right? And we need to start to analyze, like, why do we eat the foods we do? Are we addicted to certain foods? Do we use them as coping mechanisms? Do we use them as rewards? And we have to start to analyze that. We're one of the only species on the planet that will, if we can't ask dogs or cats, but like, why do you eat that? It's like, because it tastes good. So we there's this emotional response we have from food, and we look for that. So at the end of the day, stressful day, we're going to reward ourselves like, oh, I did, I kicked butt at work today. I'm going to have that drink, or I was really good at whatever. I'm going to have, some dessert today, or, oh my goodness, I'm so stressed out. I need to have that drink, So we got to analyze those things. But most people think they overcomplicate it, right? So like the athlete side, we would get into like measuring things, quantifiable stuff, like, caloric deficit, maybe caloric surplus because they're trying to gain weight. People do both, right? There's going to be like, do we count macros? There's all those sorts of things that we can do. But for the beginner or the non-athlete, the first step is to analyze the quality of foods that you're eating.
Okay.
We don't look at the quantities at all. Like, I don't care about, I do care, but like, if you are like, oh, I only can have, 2,000 calories a day, you're setting yourself up for failure. If we look at swapping out lower quality, lower nutrient dense foods for higher quality, higher nutrients in our foods, then we just swap out the quality, and we're never looking at the quantities of foods, right? So yes, there's a difference. If you are a competitive athlete, just to use myself an example, I hover around 14-15% body fat. If I wanted to like drop a weight class for jiu-jitsu competitions, right? Like I need to drop about 8 pounds, and I can use my body weight, see how much body fat I have, and it's like, is it realistic for me to lose like another 5, 6-7% body fat? Like, do I have that weight to lose, or am I going to have to start to cut into some lean mass in order to lose the weight? Now, is that something I want to do? So we can get really technical with the athletes, but again, we always have to come back to, like, can you sustain this plan? Is this something you can do? We have to look at, your work life, your training schedule, your support at home. I can't tell you how many people I have, they're dialed in on their diet, and the husband or the wife is just, cookies and bonbons and, glasses of wine every single night or whatever it is, and they don't have the support at home. So we have to, it's an ecosystem. We'll come right back to that.
Well, and you mentioned something about quality of food versus quantity. How can people decide, or how can they know what the quality is of their food, and how do they find better quality food?
So there's some real simple guidelines. And again, these are just broad generalizations, but the vast majority of Americans, I would argue probably 90-95% of Americans, are protein deficient. They need to eat more protein. They need to have more protein on every single plate. A good rule of thumb, and again, I don't want people to get into measuring, but like, you should be eating 90% or 100% of your body weight in grams of protein every single day. And most people don't hit that. They don't even only hit half of that. So that's like the number one thing we can do. And protein's great because it breaks down into the building blocks for literally everything you're made of. And it also makes you feel more full, right? So I always encourage people to eat their proteins first. So, like whatever, if you go to the restaurant and you get a burger and a side salad and fries, it's like, eat the burger first, right? Get that protein in, because it's going to fill you up, make you feel more full. Then eat the greens, and then, maybe nibble on some fries, as the last thing. Most people like barrel through the carbs to the fries, and then it triggers a different kind of insulin response, and they get more hungry, and they don't know when they're full and all that stuff.
Okay.
But so that's that. Protein needs to be upped for 90% of the people. The other thing is to eat whole, real foods. So if we're at the grocery store, don't buy things that come in a box. Don't buy things that have more than 5 ingredients. If they have a label on it, read the label. If you don't know what the words are, you probably should not be eating it. There are so many food additives in our normal consumption, in American consumption. They're like artificial colors, all sorts of things that are banned in other countries because they make us sick, and they make us hold body fat. And I for one think that's a little bit intentional, because anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But so, eating real foods that don't have labels. If they have labels, try to shoot for things that have less than 5 ingredients, and you should know everything that's on that label. If you don't know what it is, like, why are you putting it in your body? And for me, it's kind of like intuitive, but most people, they were born this way, or they're raised this way, they develop these habits, maybe from their parents, but so eating whole, real foods, unprocessed foods, unrefined foods, things we ate 100 years ago that didn't exist in the grocery store 100 years ago. Yeah.
What if people are out there in podcast land being like, what about dried pasta?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Well, again, it's like, you got to look at your goals and what you want to do. I try to minimize and refine carbohydrates as much as possible. And that's breads, sugar, wheat, those sorts of things. There is not a whole lot of nutritional value from grains. There's some fiber in there, but you have to look at like the way grains are made. Like, they literally like strip all the nutrients out of them, and then they enrich them, quote unquote, and they put nutrients back into them. So all the good things from like natural grains are basically taken out of the vast majority of grain products. I'm not saying I never have a bowl of pasta or some lasagna or some stuff like that, but it's not a normal staple of my diet.
Yeah.
It's a treat for me.
It's like an occasional thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not eating pasta every day.
Yeah, because like if we go through some like elimination and we start to remove some of these things from our diet, right? And we spend 30, 60 days like that, and then we start to incorporate them, then we see what the actual effects they have on our body. And I guarantee you, like, if you like eliminated refined carbohydrates from your diet for a couple weeks, there's going to be a detox. There's going to be like, it will suck. You know, it really will. Your body refined. When I say refined carbohydrates, like there's really no difference between. There is some difference, but between sugars and complex carbohydrates. But they are more addictive than heroin and cocaine.
What?
Yes. And
no way.
Absolutely. And people do not realize how addicted to sugar they actually are. And so when it comes out, there's a detox. And I'm not saying you're going to be, shaking on your bedroom floor,
but
you're
going to go to rehab.
Yeah, you're going to have headaches. You're going to feel like crap. You're going to feel slow and sluggish. But our bodies are designed to, I'm all over the place here with topics. Our bodies are designed to burn fat as a primary fuel source, right? Essentially, there's a lot to that. But we have kind of supplemented that to eating an abundance of sugars. And so sugar is in our bloodstream. Extra sugar ends up in our liver. We get fatty liver disease and pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, those types of things because of an abundance of sugar. It's fascinating when you really start to read about it. But if we eliminate that stuff, take it out of our diet for a month, and then we start to put it back in. Like if I eat a bowl of pasta, I feel like bloated and slow. The next day on the mats, I'm going to be moving like crap, like garbage. I'm not going to like the way I perform because of the effects that refined carbohydrates have on me. And I'm not saying I never have a piece of cake or any of that, but I understand. Like I'm dialed in on my nutrition, so I'm very sensitive to a lot of these things.
Well, and I think what you just said right now, I think is important, is that you understand how different foods affect your body and how it makes you feel when you eat them. So then you just said, like, if I eat a bowl of pasta, I'm not going to perform on the mats as well. So maybe if you have like an intense class or a competition or whatever, you're probably not going to be eating that beforehand. But that doesn't mean that you never eat that stuff.
No, like I said, but one of the big differences I think between beginners and athletes or non-athletes and athletes is like we start to look at food as a fuel source. How is this going to fuel me? How am I going to perform? And this is entirely a mindset thing.
It can be delicious fuel.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's I'm crazy. My wife thinks I'm crazy because I love veggies. I love my veggies. I will have like a bowl of salad and I won't put dressing on it. I'm eating, the carrots, the cucumbers, the tomatoes, the lettuces.
I'll chop them up too.
Yeah.
I'll take that as like a snack when I work late, and I'll chop up a whole bunch of vegetables and just like stick it in my little bento box, and I just eat it. I just eat them.
Yeah, right out of the earth.
It's delicious.
They're phenomenal. All
love
veggies.
carrots.
Yeah, I love carrots too. But
it's my favorite vegetable. I like other vegetables too.
Yeah, but it's like I don't have to put the dressing on it. Like I appreciate the food for the flavor that it is. And once we start to like remove some of these other things that are normal, everyday foods that most people are eating, then our palate changes. What we find tasty and delicious changes. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But it takes work.
Yeah. No,
initially.
it does. Yeah, and I will back that up. I have experienced that, like the palate changing, 100%. Like you guys in podcast land couldn't see me nodding very deeply when he was saying that. Like I 100% agree. There's certain things that I don't really eat much of anymore that I used to eat all the time, and then there's also certain things that I really don't eat anymore at all. And if I do eat them occasionally now, if I'm just like, oh, I haven't had this in a while, and then I try it, I'm just like, this actually doesn't really taste good.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it really is. And most people, like, they don't have the willpower, to like do this like elimination diet for 30 days. And I'm not saying go out and cut everything out of your diet, but like
that's not sustainable.
Yeah, but hey, like go try and cut out refined carbs out of your diet for a week or two, and then start to sprinkle some of them back in. That's essentially a keto diet, right? It's like no carbs, right? And I'm not saying go out and do keto. Keto has its merits, it has its faults. It's good for some people.
Let's just disclaim right now.
Yeah.
Don't change your diet. Don't do all this stuff without the guidance of a nutritionist. Yeah. Talk to your doctor. That's just blanket statement.
Yeah.
Talk to your doctor.
Consult a physician.
Consult a medical professional. Yeah. We are not medical professionals. Yeah. All right.
But the other side of that is I know how to help people lose weight, have more energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you don't, like, you're you're not just like a schmuck,
Yeah.
like talking about this stuff, but at the same time, like I feel like somebody's gonna get a hold of this episode, and somebody's gonna be like, they're telling me to do this. I'm like, no, this is like general information.
Yeah.
This is not specific to certain individuals. Like, if you have questions about what your diet and exercise should be, go talk to your physician.
But that's, kind of the boilerplate disclaimer, right?
Yeah.
Like, before you get on an exercise regimen, talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
For sure,
Sorry, I felt like I just had to say that,
no,
because
it's
I
fine.
was just
I think
like,
we've
there's
said
gonna
it a couple times.
There's gonna be somebody out there who's just like, well,
Yeah.
she told me to do this.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not.
Well, everybody's different, right? You got to
Yeah.
take it on a case-by-case basis. But so these are broad generalizations that are effective for most people, regardless of their goals. And I'm really not like talking about like, okay, you want to lose weight, you want to gain lean mass, you want to fit into this. It's like these are kind of general things. It's like eat some more protein, eat real foods, stop eating processed foods. You can get some great results. And like, we're not talking about quantities. I haven't like we've mentioned calories, but I'm not saying you should eat X amount of calories.
We're not giving calorie recommendations here. Yeah. And I appreciate that you haven't talked about quantities. Like you're not necessarily saying like people of this body type and age and whatever should be eating this much or whatever. Like, no.
Well, and
like you said, it's all individual. Like,
for sure,
for your particular body.
Yeah, and this is like the beginner sort of recommendations, right?
Yeah.
And then so like an athlete, somebody who's really looking to perform, like the Chicago Open's tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We have some friends that are competing. Some of these people have 30 people in their brackets, 24 people in their brackets.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so like they're looking at 6, 7, 8 matches. Some of them are doing gi
That's
and no
really
gi.
intense.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, the energy expenditure is insane.
Yeah, so how do you perform, for 2 days potentially with, as lean as possible with the energy,
so high
to do all these things. Yeah. So now like I would really start to dial in on, okay, here's your caloric intake. Here's how many, your macros numbers. This is how many proteins, carbs, and fats you should be looking at on a regular basis, and those sorts of things. But like, and that's sort of the difference. But the hobbyist, the beginner is like, hey, how do I not get winded from a 5-minute sparring round and have to sit out for 2 more rounds? Mm-hmm. Like these recommendations, the beginner recommendations, will get people very, very far. But then it's like, oh man, can I compete at the Chicago Open with 4% body fat, as lean as possible, and be at this certain specific weight? Like how many people at Gracie Bar at Downers Grove are really like looking to do that? I mean, there's a half dozen out of the how many hundreds of members they have. Maybe a dozen.
It's a very small number.
Yeah, we're talking about 1% ish. 2%. It's like, and a lot of people come into my gym. They're like, oh, I need to do macros and keto and all these things. It's like, whoa, right? Like, I don't like. Let's just focus on the quality of your food first. Yeah, and then like if
one
you can
step
do
at a time.
Yeah, and then we can start to like dial in some of these other things if you can instill the habits. If they're sustainable, and if they're not, we have to look at other things. And that's a big thing I think with nutrition is it's all habits based, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do? What do I default to? I get home from work, I have dinner or whatever, I sit on the couch, I'm watching some Netflix or whatever, like, do I grab a bag of chips,
I love Netflix.
Yeah, but like, there's a habit there, am I bored? Do I grab for food just because I'm bored? So, like, I
used to do that all the time.
Yeah, and so many people do it. Emotional eating's a tremendous thing, but for a lot of people, and there's a good reason for it, but like, can we remove quote unquote bad habits, and how do we replace them with quote unquote good habits? So like some of the things are like making bad habits or habits that are going to keep you from reaching your goals, make them invisible, make them difficult, right? So like, let's say drinking, right? Like, I have a hard time not having a drink every single day. Well, it's like every time you open your fridge, is there a case of beer there? Are you staring at a liquor cabinet right next to your TV every single night? Like, if drinking is your problem, make it invisible. And then the converse for like good habits is make them visible, make them easy.
Yeah, accessible.
Yeah, and Netflix is a great example of this. Do you know why we binge watch shows?
Because it's there.
Well, and you don't even. It's harder for you to push the button and turn off the TV.
It auto plays the next episode.
Boom,
it's
10
so
seconds.
easy.
Yeah, they
Less
know.
than 10.
Yeah,
it's like 5 seconds sometimes.
The wizards at that make the shows, they understand this. I mean, Amazon's the same way. Like, they figured out how to make it as
It's so
painless as
easy.
possible. Just one-click shopping. That's how
Exactly.
Amazon made billions.
It's so
One-click
easy.
shopping.
Yeah.
So they make the habits easy and accessible.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how, like, if you want to like replace, better foods in your diet or your nutrition plan, put them right forefront. Like, there are a lot of my members that I've helped. It's like, you know what? I'm coming to your house and I'm going through your cabinets. They're like, oh my God. And it's like, yeah, like I'm getting rid of all the bad habit stuff because you're paying me to do this. And if it's sitting there staring at you, like, you're going to do it because it's right there,
Yeah. And I have to fully support that because I've noticed that for myself as well. Like, I'll get the bag of whole carrots at Aldi, and I keep them like right there, And also it's not to say that we don't have like boxes of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is, like, it's way more effort to try to prepare a box of whatever than it is just to wash off a carrot and eat it.
Yeah.
And if I'm hungry, it's like, that's going to get me food faster than any of this other stuff.
Yeah, well,
and it's
it's
just
like,
I'm hungry now. I want to
the box of cookies or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm addicted to bakery. Like my wife brings it home or whatever. It's like, I know it's there and I'm going to root it out. The boys like their muffins. I got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they have their treats, but it's like, if those muffins are there, it's like all of my willpower not to eat them or whatever. But
that's the thing with me too. I love pastries, breads, that kind of thing. What I've done though is I heard this from someone else, and I can't exactly remember who told this to me. This has been a long time ago, but it's stuck in my mind. Is that if you want the breads and the pastries and stuff, fine, have them, but you have to make them from scratch.
Oh, that's like real food.
But then you have to put forth the effort too.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
And so and then also there's no preservatives in there, so it's like it doesn't necessarily sit on your shelf and last for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, and everything's scalable, by the way. You know what I mean? You have to look at where you're starting from. If you're like munching on a box of cookies every single night or day or whatever, or a bag of potato chips, like having a piece of toast is a great step. It's progress.
Yeah.
I'm not. So like everybody's different. So you got to look at that stuff. But there are studies. Like if you put that box of cookies like in the basement, in the cabinet, whatever, the fridge downstairs or whatever, and you're upstairs watching TV, like you won't go downstairs and get it. But if it's right there, you just make it a little harder to get to.
Exactly.
It's a huge step.
I mean, you can if
beginners.
you still want it, you can have it, but you're gonna have to spend a little more effort to get it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I get in a mood and I'm just like, I really want some spaghetti and I want to put some olive oil and some Parmesan and all that kind of stuff. But then now I have to sit there and I have to boil the spaghetti and I have to like make sure it doesn't boil and strain it. It's so many steps. And I mean, and boiling spaghetti is like, technically easy, but it's just like if I'm hungry, if I'm in a place where I'm just like I am hungry right now and I want to eat, I'm gonna reach for whatever's convenient and right there.
Yeah. And
so that's why I keep that bag of carrots in the fridge.
Yeah, for sure. There's the mental games too. Like I play these things like where I've like tried to lose some weight and it's like, like say certain foods are like that's poison. Like I don't want it. Like alcohol. Like I like my.
We're
drink.
not saying that food is poison.
Yeah.
Don't take it like that.
But it's like it's a mental game. Like I have like you play these games with yourself. And the other side is like if I have the willpower to abstain from eating the muffin or whatever. It's like it's like I treat that as a reward. Like oh my God, like I'm badass. Like I did that. So like these kind of mental games you play. You reward yourself for certain behavior rather than being like, oh, I can't have the muffin. It's like that's defeating.
Have the muffin. Yeah. If you have. Also, here's another thing too. Based on personal experience, I don't have science right now to back this up. It's probably out there somewhere, but just based on personal experience, sometimes you do have to honor your cravings, but also like eat other foods with that craving food.
It's like like the Pareto's law, like 80-20. It's like if you're doing good 80-90% of the time, what you do the other 10-20% of the time, is not going to affect your overall trajectory.
Yeah.
So of course.
Yeah.
Where that gets to be a slippery slope is I have a lot of weekend warriors. They're like, oh, I'm so good Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they're like, it's like, it's the weekend, I'm cutting loose, and I'm, whatever, and I'm hanging out with my buddies or my girlfriends or whatever it is, but people don't realize like Friday, Saturday, Sunday is like 40% of your life, and then if you add holidays and birthday parties and the other events, it's like, well, now half your life is, dedicated to, moving towards your goals, and the other half is the party. So like people don't like when you start to break that down for people, they're like, oh my goodness, like thought it was only the weekend. Anyway.
Well, that's another like restrictive thing too, because it seems very like polarizing mentality is like super restrictive, and then like super like wild and crazy with it. There's no balance to it.
Yo-yo. That's yo-yo. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was stuck in that cycle for a long time.
Yeah, whether that's a weekly thing, like I'm partying on the weekends, or whether it's like, oh, I'm on this diet for 2 months or whatever it is, and then I'm off the rails for 2 months, and then I'm back on a diet for 2 months. Like, that's just yo-yoing, and it's like, and that's why it's got to be sustainable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like my yo-yoing was mostly due to the depression cycles I was going through, but it's anyway. Let's get back to nutrition. Sorry, I can go off topic for so long.
Well, it's a broad topic.
It really is.
Yeah,
like a lot of these things are like intertwined so closely that it's hard just to like pick them apart for like one specific thing.
And that's why it's like I started my coaching career as like, oh, I'm going to teach fitness, and then it's like, oh, well, I got to do nutrition because like you can't have one or without the other. But what I have come to realize over years of training people is that what we do in the gym is not where the results are made. It's the metabolism that we establish through our diet and stress and other outside factors. Like that's what sets up our metabolism to run like the machine that we want it to. And then what we do in the gym is really is more for mindset. Like you're lifting weights now on a regular basis.
I am.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I'm not saying stop lifting weights. It's we'll talk about that in the next podcast. But lifting weights and exercise in general is a tremendous thing. But like what you do in the gym really isn't going to move you towards your goals. It's what you do. If you're at the gym, most people are at the gym like 3 hours a week. It's what you do the other whatever it is 126 hours a week. That's what sets you up for your success moving towards your goals. It's it's an ecosystem again. It's a wellness thing. It's mindset. It's stress. It's habits. It's your significant others, your support network. Accountability buddies. It's like all of that stuff is so much more important than what you do for the actual 3 hours.
So managing conditions.
Yeah.
Like so, I mean, I'm pretty open with like I have depression, but guess what? I also have Crohn's disease.
Yeah, right.
So when you're talking about how gut health impacts, like I was, podcast land couldn't see me. I was like smiling, like, yep, sure does.
Yeah. Well, and like the chronic inflammation from having poor gut health, like there's all this research coming out. It's like myriad cancers, like could be a contributing factor in mental conditions, right? Like so much stuff. It's just like. They call your stomach your second brain.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons for that is as we develop as fetus, your brain and your gut are like the first two things that form, and I think initially they're like essentially connected. Like at the very initial stages of pregnancy. But it's
anyway. That's okay. Okay, so So my next three questions are kind of all sort of intertwined with what you were saying. So let me just say what the three questions are. We can kind of just sort of talk about this at the same time because they're kind of all intertwined.
Sure.
So first, how can people start to incorporate good nutrition into their lives?
Yeah.
Second, why is good nutrition so important for Jiu Jitsu? And then third, how can people deprogram themselves from diet culture and embrace Jiu Jitsu lifestyle?
Sure. So I think we've touched a lot of
We really have. So how can people start to incorporate good nutrition into their lives?
That's what I was talking about. So the quality foods. Don't worry about quantity. The first thing you do is start to assess the quality of foods. So we're looking for nutrient-dense foods, real foods, non-processed, non-refined foods. Like that's like step one. And up your protein intake for like 90% of people. The second one was
why is good nutrition so important for Jiu Jitsu?
I think it's important for Jiu Jitsu specifically, but life in general. But if we want to hone in on, whether you're a hobbyist or a competitive Jiu Jitsu player, like you're going to have better rolls. You're going to recover faster. You're going to have more energy, right? So what's a better roll? Like you're not going to be gassed from the first round.
Yeah, gasping for air.
Yeah, sparring. Like your metabolic system is how you deliver energy to your cells and your muscles and all the things. And if that's primed, you're going to be able to roll better. You're not going to be so gassed out from a round or two. You'll be able to stay in the jiu-jitsu school longer, more consecutively. Like I train I try to train 4 or 5 days a week at least, and then I'm doing strength training and cardio and all that stuff on top of that, and stretching, very important. But if my metabolism and my nutrition is not primed, like, I'm not going to be able to do that. And for the people that don't know me, I'm a 46-year-old. I know one of your questions was like, what's your role in the gym? I'm the inherent old guy in the gym. One of them, a representative old guy, but I'm 46, and I train 2 times a day, almost every single day.
Yeah.
If I didn't mind nutrition,
different things though. Like you're at Jiu Jitsu, and then you're at the gym, and then you're doing whatever.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
That's the next one, guys.
Yeah, but more energy, recover faster is a big one. Like if you spend a 90-minute session at Gracie Barra like we did today, like is it going to take me 2 days to recover from that, or can I come back tomorrow, Saturday, and get on the mats again? So recovery is a huge thing. Being consistent. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's it. And then, the third one was, how can people deprogram themselves from diet culture and embrace a jiu-jitsu lifestyle? Yeah, so this is where I think you need to find a good coach. There is so much noise, so much bad information for some of the reasons I was talking about before. And men and women, we kind of were bombarded differently with these things.
Yeah.
But find somebody that knows what they're talking about, has a good track record. There's a lot of garbage coaches out there. There's a lot of great coaches. Yeah.
Let me ask, because this is the first question I feel like it's going to be to that statement is, well, how do I know if they're good or garbage? Like, how do I know if they know what they're talking about? If I don't know what I'm talking about, how do I know if they do?
So I think you need to be meeting with a person in person, and that might be remote. I have I've remote clients all over the country, but we sit down and we Zoom or we get on phone calls and we talk. A real coach, a good coach, is going to connect with you emotionally and mentally. Like, you'll get a good vibe. And there's all different types of school. Like, I love the CrossFit, Kool-Aid, if you will. Like, I'm drinking from that. But there's other great stuff out there too. But if you're just looking at like social media reels and posts and those sorts of things, like there might be some good information out there, but there's a lot of garbage.
Yeah, there is.
There's just so much garbage
right there.
Yeah, so you have to like kind of interview the coach, right? And it has to be a good fit. And they should have some clients that they've worked with, right? And they should be able to provide some, what's the word I'm looking for, social proof. I've been working with Stacy for the last 9 months, and look at what we've done. And there are some coaches that work only with women, or that's their bread and butter. And some coaches that only work with whatever jiu-jitsu players. And like you got to look at the people that resonate with you. It's an interview process. It's hard, but like if your gut is off. Your gut feeling is off, like, it's probably not going to be a good fit. Even if that is one of the most knowledgeable, best coaches in the world, like, if you don't buy into it, you're not going to buy into it, So it's a nuanced question.
Piggybacking off of that, do you have any example questions people can ask the coach when they're interviewing? Like quote-unquote interviewing.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, certifications are one thing, but you don't need to have a certificate to be educated, knowledgeable, and know how to train people. So it's like they can have the list of credentials, and I have a lot of doctors in my gym, just as a case in point, kind of circling back to that, and they're like, they wholeheartedly say, like, they don't do what I do. What I do on a daily basis is save lives, right? Like, and they give me full credit for that. So it's like, I don't have a doctorate degree,
it's preventative
measures. Yeah, exactly. My goal is to keep you from ever seeing a doctor. I don't want you to ever have to go to a doctor. It's a big goal. But so the credentials are one thing. You can look at those, but there's that. I would look at how long they've been coaching people. Do they have examples? Do they know people that have gone through a similar path or journey that you've been on? You got to look at the program they're offering. That's a big part of it.
What about like philosophy? Like, do they believe in, is this something you could ask somebody, like, do they believe in BMI? How do they, that kind of, can people
Well, so we're looking at like quantitative metrics, like how do you track success, And certainly, like any coach that's not going to be forthcoming with these things, if you ask them very pointed questions, like I think that's a red flag warning sign, if somebody comes into my gym, like we do an intro consultation, and we follow what we call a prescriptive model. So you're going to come talk to me about your goals, and I'm going to ask you questions about, like, what have you tried in the past, and are you working out now, and all those sorts of things. And then I'm going to prescribe a workout regimen, not a like doctor prescription, but I'm like, hey, you should do some personal training, you should get on a nutrition plan, or hey, you should jump into the group classes, or hey, maybe you want to work out at home. There's a psychological component to this and a physiological component to it. But if somebody starts asking me pointed questions about my systems, like I'm going to answer that and how we help people be successful. But it's hard. But try a few.
Yeah.
Like
almost like dating.
Yeah.
You have to kind of like maybe you think it's going to work out first, and then you get into it just a little bit, and you're like, I don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah. Like, are you getting into a year-long contract?
Oh yeah. See if they make you sign a contract. That's important information.
Yeah.
Or do they do like a trial period?
Yeah. I mean, I don't give away free stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just like, what if you find out like 3-4 months in that you really don't jive with this person? You do most people, I guess, let me ask you this, do most coaches require a 1-year contract?
A lot of gyms do. We don't.
Or can you do a month-to-month type of thing?
We have programs like we have 3-month, 2-month, 12-week program. We have a 9-week program, but we don't do contracts. If somebody wants to prepay me for a year of group classes, like I'm gonna, give them a little package. But if at any point they're like, I'm out, I don't want to keep that person training that person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have an exit interview at least and be like, hey Stacy, you've been with me for 6 years. Like, what's going on? Like I want to talk to that person, but like I'm not gonna hold somebody there. And our boilerplate onboarding is a 3-month program, with nutrition. But if somebody gets a month into it and they're like, this just isn't for me, like I'm like, like go, like But other gyms have contracts and
Well, I mean, there's got to be. I feel like something important here is like there's got to be an exit. Like you can't necessarily be locked in forever. Like you have to know where the exit is. And if they do make you sign a contract, you have to look really hard for where the exit language is.
I want one of my goals as a coach is to render myself obsolete. Right? Like I want to give enough information and educate my clients enough so they don't ever need a coach ever again in their lives. Right? And in the process of that, like I develop relationships where people don't ever want to leave my gym, which is awesome, But that's what I'm trying to do. Like I don't want you to ever need a coach again. I want to make sure you understand why we program weights and sets and those sorts of things, like why I'm giving you this nutrition advice, like why we're going to tweak this, that, the other thing, why you should maybe incorporate this into your diet and remove that from your diet. But I'm going to talk about the reasons for that.
Yeah.
And then I'll point at peer-reviewed medical journals, and all those sorts of things.
Well, those are important too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So the next couple of questions are, what would you say to somebody who might still, after this conversation, think that this kind of thing is out of reach for them?
It's really not that hard, right? And any progress is better than no progress, right? So whether that's like getting into a gym regimen or starting a better diet that's going to move you towards your goals, right? So like, if you're eating a bag of cookies every single night, eating half a bag of cookies, that's progress. Yeah,
yes,
right?
it
Like,
is.
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like we got to take everything, we're going to meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
And you need to do some real deep soul searching. And I call this like getting clear with my clients.
Yeah.
Like some of my clients, like they're over 50% body fat. I've had 400-pound gentlemen come in, and it's like there's real health implications, like life-threatening health implications. Like you need to lose 200 pounds. But I'm not going to be like, you need to go on this crazy restrictive, all this stuff. I'm like, it's like, hey, eat a half a bag of cookies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Drink the diet soda instead of the regular soda. There's like, you have to look at people. So you have to look at these small things. How do I usually phrase this? The smallest things that have the greatest impact.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God, in Jiu Jitsu too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, it's like what's this little thing we can incorporate today that's going to have the biggest impact on your life? Okay, you've been doing that for a few weeks. Like, let's incorporate another thing that's going to get you more results, better results.
Yeah.
And it's like you got to stack these like little tiny wins. Repetitively. It's like and that's what it is. It's when people. I like to set huge goals for people.
Yeah.
So like whatever that the theoretical 400-pound dude, he comes, he's like, I need to lose 20 pounds. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, we're going to do that in the next 2-3 months. But like, here's my year plan. Here's my 2-year plan. Here's my 5-year plan. Here's my life plan. Here's the legacy plan I want to develop for you. But the first thing it starts with is like, hey man, why don't you switch to diet soda instead of soda. You know, like
Yeah.
we start with that one little thing, right?
Yeah.
I hope that was good.
Yeah,
concise
no,
enough.
it is. No, it's fine. It's I appreciate that you said that it's small steps, because I've also personally, like, I've been in the cycle where I literally sit down on my couch in whatever state I'm in, and I'm just mindlessly eating like popcorn out of a bag, or eating chips out of a bag, or I literally would go to the store. Like, I've done this. I've literally gone to the store in an episode and bought a dozen donuts, and I sat in my car and ate half of them, and then I got home and ate the other half.
A huge step for a lot of people is just like taking a food diary, and I'm not even talking about like changing the foods you eat, but start to write down the emotions you have before and after you ate. Like, yeah, and it's like starting to understand your relationship with food, mentally, psychologically.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like that's a tremendous step when people are like, you know,
yeah.
I mean, these donuts, like, I don't even know why.
Exactly, and I'm not trying to like shade anybody. Like, I love donuts. I still do. I had a donut. Like, I don't know. I went to the store because I really wanted a donut, and by God, I went to the store and I bought a donut, and I bought 2 donuts, and I ate one in my car because I wanted it. And then I saved the other one and I ate it the next day. You know, it's like, that's the thing, because like condition management, I would have sat and ate both of them in the car, even though the only one I really wanted at that moment was the one. But like, I'm not trying to say like, if you have 2 donuts versus whatever, like, oh, that's a bit, like, I'm not saying that, but it's just like what you said, like, reduce the amount. Like, instead of eating literally a dozen donuts in the span of 2 hours, I had 2 donuts in the span of 2 days.
Well, you have to, and again, it circles back to goals, right? Like, what are you trying to do? If you look at like world's strongest men competitors, right? Like the Mountain, Bjorn Hafthorson, or Eddie Hall, right? These are giant people that weigh. Eddie Hall's 6'1". He's an inch taller than I am, and when he was competing world's strongest man, he weighed about 400 pounds. So it's a dude 1 inch taller than me that weighs nearly double my weight. These guys eat 10,000 calories a day. Like, there's like a Eat the Mountains diet challenge where like some regular guys try to eat what the mountain eats in a day. But like, in order to like deadlift over 1,000 pounds and do these guys need to have that caloric intake. So like Eddie Hall like would literally get up in the morning and start eating Snickers bars. So he had the caloric intake to maintain the athletic ability that he needed to compete at that level. You know, and it's insane. But like again, it's like, what are your goals? Everybody's different. And like, I don't know your background. Somebody walks in my gym day one, like, I don't know their background. It's my goal to understand their background, and then give them some feedback, some coaching, and incorporate those little things that are going to help move them towards their goals.
Yeah.
You know? So.
And I mean, and that's kind of circling back to what you had said before, is like, what are your goals? How do you feel? And also, like, not necessarily cutting out entire food groups or whatever, but like maybe reducing the amount that you're eating in one sitting.
Or
like,
swapping.
Or swapping it. But it's like with my donuts example. I literally used to eat so many in a sitting.
I love donuts.
And like, I love them too. And like, the first like 1, maybe 2 felt all right, but then after that, if I just kept shoving them on my face, I'm like, I don't even want this anymore. But like, now I've started, I can't stop.
Yeah, well, you gotta do that's the food diary thing. You gotta start like, how did I feel before I ate this? Like, why did I buy the donuts? And then how do I feel after?
Kind of that all or nothing mentality type of deal. But yeah, just like reducing the amount. It's like, I still eat donuts, guys. But now I'm only eating like 1, maybe 2 instead of a dozen. You know,
it's fascinating. You know, like, and there's so much into this. But anyway,
Anyway, so next question. We're wrapping up here. What are some good resources that people can check out? That I can link them in these show notes and whatever.
Sure. Come see me. All right. No, in all seriousness, like, I am on a mission to help as many people as I possibly can.
Oh, 1,000%. I'm gonna link your website and stuff.
Yeah, and so you know, you can book a 15-minute call for me, and this is not a pitch. This is not me trying to sell you coaching. This is me just spend 10-15 minutes on the phone with you to give you some clarity, some insight on how you can move towards your goals. Right? Like,
we just spent like an hour talking. And like, listen to this episode, guys. Like, he just gave a lot of really good like advice and stuff for.
Yeah, but I mean, there's tons of great resources out there. You know, there's podcasts I listen to. You know, there influencers out there, but there's real science-based information. Like, I love Peter Attia is one of Dr. Peter Attia. He's out there. Huberman is another one, the Huberman Lab. He's a phenomenal guy to listen to. Dr. Amy Shaw. I can't remember the name of her book. She's got a podcast also, but like there's so many. I mean, there's a lot of really, really, really smart people out there that are doing great work. But those are like kind of three of the big ones off the top of my head that I love. Dr. Amy Shaw, Peter Attia is doing some great stuff. Andy Galpin's another one. Andrew Huberman. Like, there's some great info out there.
Yeah, so I can find links to whatever they have.
Yeah,
and then I'll just link everything down in the show notes so people can just click on that. Because we've said before that like there's so much noise out there, and then we've also said now that like, there's a lot of good information. It's like people who are just like, well, how do I know what's what? Like,
so that's what people pay me for.
Yeah.
I am trained to read through all the noise and decipher and then and give you the stuff that works. And honestly, like there's a lot of trial and error when I started coaching people, and I'm not saying I'm just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, but like I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've developed a system that is works the vast majority of the time, regardless of who you are, regardless of what your goals are. I have people that need to lose 100 pounds, and I have Ironman athletes in my gym. I have I've got all types. So
Awesome. So, that circles back to what you had said earlier about, like, finding a good coach and the interview process. We already talked about that. Okay, so where can people find you on social media? You
can always shoot me an email, Dave@CrossFitSpero, which is SPERO.com. My Instagram handle is Coach_Dave Greene, and it's Coach Dave Greene on Facebook. Yeah, that's really where I'm at right now. So.
Okay, awesome. Wow, Coach Dave, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time, and this was really thought-provoking, informational. And one more time, we are not medical professionals. Before you start any diet or exercise program, consult a medical professional.
Absolutely.
Consult your physician.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
This was so much fun. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for helping me get my voice out there.
Yeah, definitely. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. This definitely was the longest episode I've ever done. But with a complex topic like this one, which also goes hand in hand with Dave's next guest appearance, talking about weightlifting, cross-training, and general exercise along with Jiu Jitsu. It's so complex and it's so individualized, as you heard him saying. And so I really am glad that we took the time to dive into a lot of these particular topics. So I just wanted to kind of summarize some of the main points that Dave was making. The first one is eat quality food without necessarily worrying about the quantity of it. He also talked about building sustainable habits for long-term success. He also talked about eating in moderation for certain types of foods that you don't necessarily want to have as part of your day-to-day nutrition. And I touched on this, and also Dave had touched on this a little bit, is that we generally are stuck in an all or nothing type of mentality, which really hinders our goals. So again, if you have questions, Dave is a coach. He does have certifications for helping people specifically with these things. So I'm going to link everything in the show notes. I'm going to link some references that he made about other people you can listen to. And I really hope that this was helpful and that this was informative. And if it made you question things, that it inspires you to go get the answers to your questions. So with all of that said, I am looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast, give it a rating, and leave me a review. If you have any questions for me, or if there's something you want me to talk about, then DM me on Instagram at jujiteraspodcast, or email me at jujiteraspodcast@gmail.com. These will all be linked in the show notes below. See you next time.